Hello and welcome. I'm Crossing Borders Music Executive Director and cellist Tom Clues, and we're so glad to be able to welcome you this afternoon to Composers with Disabilities Around the World, our chamber music program for you. This kind of unusual or unique event is the culmination of a call for scores from composers around the world with disabilities, and these are the pieces that we've chosen to share with you from that competitive call for scores. I'd like to introduce today Sarika Mehta, our ASL American Sign Language interpreter. We're so glad to have her with us, and if you're appreciating and enjoying the interpretation, please do let us know in the chat. The more you tell us you're enjoying it, the easier it is for us to provide it again in the future. So please do let us know if you're appreciating that. I'm one of the two co-hosts this afternoon. Our other co-host is one of those composers who was chosen in this call for scores, composer Rylan Gleave. Welcome, Rylan. So glad to have you here with us.
Hello, I'm Rylan. Nice to meet you all digitally. Welcome, all viewers. I'm Rylan Gleave. I'm a UK-based autistic trans gay composer, and I'm just really thrilled to be here and having had the opportunity to send in some music for this call for scores. One goal of this concert that Crossing Borders Music is hosting is to help address and reduce the stigma sometimes associated with disabilities, plus to enjoy some of the beautiful music that has been sent in from around the world. I feel as though showcasing the music of disabled composers and composers with disabilities serves not only to normalize the reality that we exist in all fields of life, but to illuminate viewers as to the creative possibilities of our work. As an autistic composer, this project has been phenomenal for me, from the clarity of language in the initial stages to incredibly considerate discussion of things like specific extended techniques even before the first rehearsals, and updates with really clear information at every stage. I feel as though all of the people from Crossing Borders Music that I've had the pleasure of interacting with have gone above and beyond to accommodate and uplift me in all ways possible. So big thanks for being here, Tom.
That's so kind of you to say. I hope we can continue to earn your kind words. Thank you, Rylan. And I do want to say it's been such a pleasure to get to know you and work with you over this process. It's been a true joy and something, really kind of special and beautiful in this time of pandemic that can be a downer. It's nice to have something uplifting like this project. The piece that we just heard, performed by Marianne Parker, is the Valse in D minor by Maria del Carmen Cordovez. This is one of a few pieces by historic Colombian composers that were submitted to us by Professor Luis Carlos Rodriguez Alvarez from the University of Antioquia in Colombia. And we really appreciate his reaching out with these historic works. Professor Luis Carlos shared with us the words of another scholar, Professor Eliane Duque, and she wrote about this piece and actually republished the score in a journal about Colombian periodicals of the mid-19th century. And she wrote about this waltz, and the composer, quote, "There is very little biographical data on Miss Maria del Carmen Cordovez Mure, who lived in Bogota from 1825 to about 1880. She was a lady of the Bogota elite of the 19th century, and she was the sister of the writer, diplomat, and historian Jose Maria Cordovez Mure. She belonged to a large family of good social positions, so she could have received a good education, including music. From the score of this very beautiful waltz in D minor, we know that she was blind from birth. And as an aside, it says right in the score, ciego de nacimiento, blind at birth. It's in the score. Amateur pianist and composer, her only known output is this brief musical work of only one page published in the newspaper El Niño Granadino, which was circulated in Bogota in 1848 and 1849. It's known that she performed as a pianist in some musical evenings, and that her friend Ricardo Carrasquilla, a well-known poet of the time, dedicated a noble and heartfelt copla to her in which he praised her musical talent. So we want to thank Professor Luis Carlos Rodriguez Alvarez, and not only is he a professor of music, but he's also a doctor and professor of medicine at the medical school, and he wanted to be able to share a video with us, but because of the coronavirus, he's been very busy and somewhat overwhelmed, and so we appreciate his time sharing this scholarship and these words despite the circumstances that we're in. As you're listening and watching, we want to invite you to ask questions in the chat, and we will get those questions and do our best to respond to as many as possible as we go. I do want to explain that we will not be able to answer. There will be some composers whose disabilities are not evident, and it may be because we don't know what those disabilities are, and it may be because it's personal or just sort of inappropriate to share that information. It can be a very personal thing. Depending on what the disability is, it could be a very not personal thing. But for that reason, that's the one question that we won't be able to answer, and I wanted to explain why that is and why it wouldn't really be appropriate to ask or answer that question. I don't know, Rylan, if you have anything to add on that topic?
Just simply that it's not really anybody else's business. Yeah.
There you go.
Sums it up, I think. The next piece that we have for you is Romance in E Major for Viola and Piano by American composer Josephine Maxwell. And this is the piece's world performance premiere. And there's a couple of pieces in this gig actually which are being performed for the first time. And the musicians here are Sixto Franco on viola and Marianne Parker on piano. Well, thank you very much, Josephine, for sharing that. I think the performers had a really fantastic time playing it, and it sounds absolutely stunning. Um, the next piece that we have is by a composer called Minato Sakamoto, and he has written a piece called Nocturne for Chinese Railway. He's a Japanese citizen in a doctoral fellowship program in music composition at Duke University, which is very impressive. Minato shares that the piece paints a picture of railway workers examining various train facilities in nocturnal calmness, making a tiny, lonely contribution to the gigantic system of Chinese railway. It's quiet yet not static, preparation before the sun rises. He created the slides that you'll see just before Marianne Parker's performance of this piece, and he wanted the slides to create a calm, static mood just before the piece began. Really looking forward to hearing it.
I love that evocation of the mood of railway workers working before the sun comes up and it's calm but not static. Thank you so much, Minato, for sharing that with us. One of the issues that came up in preparing this program was what to call it. So there are a couple different schools of thought about language to use around disabilities. And my understanding is that at some point, maybe a few decades ago, there was a movement towards using person-first language, meaning a person with a disability. And the idea was that a person with a disability is a person first who has a disability. And my other understanding is that more recently, there's been a movement against person-first language among some disabled people or people with disabilities, that being disabled as an identifier shouldn't be something that we sort of put behind the person, and it's not something to be ashamed of. You wouldn't refer to a person who is Jewish or a person who is Black or African American. You would say that they are an African American Jewish person, and so why should disabilities or being disabled be any different? And so there are different opinions about that language. We followed the preferences of a majority of the composers involved in this program using person-first language, but with Rylan, I know that you actually prefer the identity-first language, and would you like to share a few words about why that is?
Absolutely. So my best understanding of person-first language versus identity-first language is very similar to how you just explained it, Tom. Person-first language attempts to remove the focus on the disability and therefore emphasize the personhood of the person, the subject, before their condition, whereas identity-first language embraces the disability as part of the identity of the subject, inseparable from their personhood and how they function in an ableist society. I personally do prefer identity-first language, as do seemingly a lot of other autistic people, as I take issue with the assumption that able people need to be reminded of the personhood of disabled people. Like the idea that personhood by default means able-bodied or able-minded, and that any deviation from this norm needs to be emphasized, or else someone's humanity might be dismissed, is in fact a result of our ableist society. But it is really important for me to say that different people have different preferences and all deserve and need to be accommodated when identity issues are discussed. Everybody has their own preference, and that is absolutely fine.
Yeah, thank you, Rylan. And actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that provides a wonderful segue to our next piece and our next composer. Our next composer is Julio Lubin, who lives in Haiti, and I believe, like many of our composers this afternoon, is watching us right now. He wrote a piece that will be a world premiere performance, Pour les victimes du coronavirus, for the victims of coronavirus. And he uses a word relevant to our conversation here. He uses a word that most people in this country don't use. He uses the word handicap, and I just want to let people know that many people use different words to identify themselves, and we 100% support that, and also let you know that handicap is a word that a lot of disabled folks or folks with disabilities don't use today. Julio writes, "My name is Julio Lubin. I am a 37-year-old Haitian man, and I live with a handicap. Since I was young, I have had muscular dystrophy. Despite my condition, I went to university where I studied sound engineering. I learned recording, mixing, and mastering, and specialized in post-production. By the time I finished, I had completely lost mobility in both my legs. In my country, people with handicaps are taught that there's not much we can do, no matter how much of an education we may have. I believe that just because a part of you might have a handicap, that should not stop you from following your dreams and making them a reality." Julio's dream, I should let you know, is to open a recording studio. It's been sort of a lifelong dream of his after going to school. He hasn't had the equipment, quite frankly, to start a recording studio. And he's identified a number of pieces of equipment that he would need to open a recording studio. And after discussing this with Julio, because Haitians or people based in Haiti are not allowed to start GoFundMe accounts because of the platform, I created a GoFundMe account on his behalf to pay for equipment that would start the recording studio. And I believe our wonderful Crossing Borders Music board members who are ushering today will be sharing in the chat a link to that if you feel so moved to contribute to that. As I mentioned, this piece is written in memory of all victims of the new coronavirus, and it's performed here by Rasa Mahmoudian, Jen Leckie, Sixto Franco, and myself, Tom Clues. And this was arranged from its original instrumentation, which was an octet, and it was arranged by our own Rasa Mahmoudian. And this piece is also a world premiere performance we hope you enjoy for the victims of coronavirus.
Huge bravo to Julio there. I think the harmony involved in that piece is absolutely gorgeous. It's really heart-wrenchingly beautiful. Thank you for sharing it with us. Next piece is Karen Brown's String Quartet. Karen is a composer who teaches at the University of Pittsburgh, where she recently completed her doctoral defense researching music composition and theory. In particular, Karen has let us know that she's interested in the intersection of the digital humanities, so traditionally STEM methodologies, and narrative in music. Karen writes that her work focuses on elucidating the experiences and perspectives of women, transgender individuals, and people with disabilities. Her string quartet is in 4 movements. The first, Spina Pesce, which literally means the spine of a fish, refers to an architectural technique in which 3 bricks are laid horizontally, followed by 1 brick vertically, forming an interlaced and self-reinforcing pattern. Just as with this pattern, you'll hear how the 4 instruments play independently and then every so often all come together. Karen wrote the second movement, Under Mist and Moorland, after hearing the poem Beowulf in its original Old English language. She loved the dark and foreboding feeling of the writing, along with the unique rhythms and alliteration of the language, and wanted to recreate that feeling in music. Karen, if you're listening to this, same. I think the dark, foreboding feeling of that text is absolutely captivating, and yeah, I'm really, really looking forward to hearing that second movement there. The third movement for Mandelbrot refers to the mathematician Benoit Mandelbrot, whose work was on fractals. One popular example of fractals are images that look the same, no matter how close up or far away one looks. And this movement finishes with a fractal rhythm in which the instruments are playing the same rhythms, but some of them are playing more slowly or quickly, yet they ultimately come together and interlock. Karen wrote the last movement, the Queen, using modern harmonies, but otherwise in the style of a Baroque fugue, which is an old-fashioned musical form and style popular with composers like J.S. Bach, and relies on the overlapping of similar or identical musical materials, mirroring the first movement and bookending the piece. The movement explores these traditional techniques through the lens of the composer's feminine identity and re-examines the meaning and context of these forms, both historical and modern. So please let me let our lovely tech people here show you this world premiere performance of Karen Brown's string quartet.
Such an unexpected ending. I love that. It just sort of goes away. Congratulations, Karen, on the world premiere of your 4-movement string quartet. The next 2 pieces were also provided to us by Professor Luis Carlos Rodriguez Alvarez of Bogota, in Colombia. And he provided this information about the composer Luis Calvo from another scholar, Sergio Ospina. Sergio writes, regarding Luis A. Calvo's disease, my conclusion is that leprosy did not affect him in almost any of his physical functions for most of his life. Of the 2 types of leprosy that are most affected Colombians at the time, Calvo's was the most benign. It was only towards the end of his life, around 1943, that rheumatism affected him deeply, and it caused him a lot of pain in the hands to play piano and other manual activities. But it was a matter of old age, not directly associated with leprosy, and in the long run, he died of chronic nephritis and not leprosy. However, this does not mean that leprosy has not profoundly affected his physical health or social well-being. On the contrary, for the rest of his life after 1916, Calvo was the victim of a terrible social stigma and he was confined in the Agua de Dios colony, which was one of the most palpable symptoms or manifestations of that leprosy. In other words, his body was fine, but he had to live in this leper colony for the rest of his life. His status as a local celebrity helped him spend less painful moments than most of his counterparts in the running of the bulls, but it did represent a sort of social death. Physically, he also experienced some episodes of pain and weakness, especially in the 1920s, and because of the various treatments he had to undergo. Hence, to respond to your friends in Chicago, that's us, I would say that he did not experience many of the conventional disability symptoms, but he was instead victims of a disability no less regrettable, that of social stigma, loss of citizenship, life in the city, and the uprooting, he writes, the uprooting of the country of the healthy and even carrying with it, apparently condescending, but in the long term reaffirming the stigma of social cure. So in other words, Luis Calvo, although the physical manifestations of his leprosy were not so severe, he suffered the social stigma and in fact spent most of his life in a leper colony in Agua de Dios in Colombia. He had to leave his home city of Bogota. In fact, at Agua de Dios today, there is a wonderful statue celebrating his musical achievements. He's one of the best beloved Colombian composers, and specifically for his piano music. So Marianne Parker, again, will share two of Calvo's compositions. The first, Adios a Bogota, is written about that experience of being forced to leave because of his leprosy from Bogota. And then the Intermezzo #1, which is also draws on these Colombian dance rhythms. I think they're wonderful and charming piano pieces, and I hope you enjoy this performance by Marianne Parker.
really incredibly moving music there. It's a real treat to sit and just listen to that. So big thank you. Next up is a piece that I have written. It's called In Waves. I've covered most things in a little video that'll be shown shortly. It was just to mention that this piece has also been selected for Jack Studio 2020 to 2022 by Jack Quartet for a professional recording project. I originally didn't think I would ever hear this piece at all due to the pandemic and other unforeseen circumstances. So to experience it brought to life by not one, but two astonishing ensembles is incredibly moving. And I'm really looking forward to it. Hello, my name is Rylan Gleave. I am a composer based in Glasgow, Scotland, and I use he, him pronouns. I'm a vocalist in my spare time, often incorporating my own voice and others' voices into my projects. I'm studying with Linda Buckley at the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland, about to start the second year of my master's degree. In Waves, my piece is a response to three artworks by Scottish artist Kirsty Cohen and poem by Scottish poet Beag Horn about St Kilda, an archipelago off the coast of the Hebrides. The piece was commissioned by the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland for the Edinburgh Quartet, written in 2020, early 2020, and meant to be performed in June, but as of yet is still awaiting premiere. The score itself moves from fairly open to more standard notation, exploring the shapes and lines of the text and artwork by contrasting soft, faint seagull-like cries with darker material reminiscent of stormy waters. As an autistic composer, the most challenging aspects of being a musician are probably the social and interpersonal relationships that a composer relies on. It feels sometimes as though there's this secret, coveted social skills handbook that I simply wasn't ever given. On the plus side, this does mean that I can sit and write for 14 hours or so without needing a break, which I'm very grateful for. Just want to thank Crossing Borders Music for their support and for Tom and the team for this opportunity.
My name is Beag Horn, and in lockdown 2020, I completed my MLit in creative writing at the University of Stirling. During the course, we had the opportunity to write in response to the current Pathfoot art exhibition, the theme of which is environment. And also on offer was an option to collaborate on this with a composition student from the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland. And I was keen to make the most of this unique opportunity. Once I'd contacted Rylan Gleave, we met at Stirling University and wandered around the exhibition together. We both found ourselves quite stirred by the story of St Kilda and the dramatic paintings by Kirsty Cohen, which depicted the wildness and remoteness of these North Atlantic islands. I left it up to Rylan as to how we would proceed, and he suggested that I create a piece of writing, in my case a poem, in response to the St Kilda paintings, and he would then use this to inform and possibly weave into his composition. The poem I wrote was ekphrastic, that is to say, it verbally describes a visual work of art. And here it is. St Kilda, an Atlantic journey, from a series of paintings by Kirsty Cohen. A cleft sea stack stands bold in the simmering steel-grey sea. Lines of white foam lash themselves to its base in waves reaching to scale the rock. From its shaft billow plumes of salt spray, like the spewing of ash from Katla. The sky hangs thick with a palette of grey mists, and white flecks whip as if confetti in a storm. Birds, sea foam, feathers, or just gashes rent in a seething canvas board?
Well, congratulations, Rylan. That is a beautiful piece. And I always, when I hear it and when I was performing it and as I listen to it, it's almost as if I can taste the saltiness of the sea in my mouth at this moment. Congratulations. Very evocative and beautiful.
That is quite a compliment. Thank you very much.
I want to encourage anybody who has questions for Rylan or for any of us to please leave those in the chat and we'll get them and be able to answer them in real time. So if you have any questions for Rylan or for either of us, please do let us know. Again, congratulations, Rylan. Truly a beautiful, beautiful piece. And the attention it's gotten is well deserved.
Oh, that's very, very kind of you. I really appreciate that.
Of course, you earn it. You merit it. We have just one piece left on our program this afternoon, and this is Moda Ani by S.L. Stahl, and it's named after the Jewish prayer that's said in the morning, or given in the morning. S.L. writes about this. In traditional Judaism, the morning involves literally thanking God for waking you up, for restoring your soul to your body. This can be a very difficult thing to say during a depressive episode, but its words are also a powerful statement of renewal when the episode is over. Waking up from 14 months of depression left me feeling prayerful and led to this piece. The feeling of the fog lifting is indescribable in written word, so I am grateful to have music as my medium. I hope you enjoy this very beautiful trio that will close out our program. I want to congratulate SL and all the other composers who were involved in it and all of the performers. And I hope you find this piece truly uplifting in the spirit in which it was written.
Moda Ani, Bifaneka Melech Chai V'Chayam, Shachar Hazarta B'Nishmati B'Chamla, Rabba Amunatecha. This is the morning prayer in Judaism when you first wake up and you're thanking God for waking you up. But it also feels appropriate for coming out of a depressive episode.
Well, congratulations to SL on that heartwarming piece. We're so happy to be able to share it this afternoon. It's really, truly beautiful and uplifting, I believe. Thanks to all of our composers, including SL, Rylan, and everybody else. Karen, Minato, our friend Luis Carlos in Colombia, everybody who I'm forgetting. All of our performers, Jen Leckie, Rasa Mahmoudian, Sixto Franco, Marianne Parker, myself, Tom Clues on cello. We want to thank Tavri Kruch, who's working behind the scenes today. We want to thank the Crossing Borders Music Board members, Savi Chorm, our head usher, Jean-Paul Kofi and Fatima Issa for ushering in the chat today. I would like to thank Earl Wood, Janice Stashwick, LaDonna Friedheim, Callie Marsh, Crom Saunders, as well as Sarika Mehta for their help in this project. And I also want to mention the videography that you saw was by Aidan Kranz, sound by Corey Castillo, and we appreciate and are very thankful for the use of the space, the beautiful and resonant space at First Unitarian Church of Chicago, where this was all filmed. We also want to thank a couple of our sponsors, the Illinois Arts Council Agency, which this program was made possible in part by support from the Illinois Arts Council Agency, as well as the City of Chicago Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events, and many, many individuals and other supporters. We're so thankful for that. Lastly, I want to thank all of you for joining us, and hope you found it as moving and uplifting and beautiful a thing as I did. Rylan, did you have anything to add?
It was absolutely stunning. I thoroughly enjoyed listening to all of those pieces. And a huge thank you to absolutely everybody involved.
Awesome. I also enjoyed very much getting to know the composers over the course of this. And so thank you so much, everyone, and have a great day.